Well guys, if you just watched my favorite movies of the year, it seems like that you're expected to go ahead and figure out what are my least favorite movies of 2021. I didn't think I would have 10 movies that would appear on this list. I thought I would only have 5, but there were actually 10 movies that did appear on this list. It's just that I kind of blocked them out of my head. And there are two things I want you guys to understand. One, there's a reason why this video is called my least favorite films of 2021 and not the worst or most hated. It's because I don't hate every single film that's on this list. At the top 3, I probably have a big dislike for them, but most of the films on here are either just movies that I was disappointed by, or I didn't necessarily care for them, or I don't really like them that much. They're the ones that I thought gave me the least amount of pleasure this year, or just gave me the most amount of displeasure. The other thing I want you guys to be aware of is that I don't watch movies in order to dislike them. I only watch movies that I would find a particular interest in, and if it just so happens that I don't care for it, then it will be appearing on this list. And the last thing that I want to address is that there are going to be no honorable mentions. I only had like 10 movies that I didn't care for, and we're just going to go ahead and start running them down. Now that all of the announcements that I wanted to give you guys are out of the way, let's just go ahead and run down my top 10 least favorite films of 2021. Coming in on the bottom of the list is going to be The Kingsman. I just got back from watching this movie recently. I was expecting to dislike this movie a lot more higher because the trailers didn't sell me. I didn't think that it was a cool idea to create a prequel film from the Kingsman franchise. But when I did see it, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think some of the storytelling in here is not that bad. Some of the craziness is kind of fun to watch. There's action in here that actually does make sense. And when certain characters are put in specific situations that are supposed to make you feel upset, the movie did get me emotional at times. So why is it on the list? I think the reason why it is supposed to be on the list is because it's such a huge detachment from the other Kingsman movies that if this film was its own thing, I would have really liked it. But because it's attached to the Kingsman property, I'm very conflicted on how to feel about this movie. Sometimes when it wants to act crazy, I can't necessarily get into it that much because there are other moments where it wants me to take it seriously, and the moments that want me to take it seriously, I can't necessarily get into that because there's some really crazy stuff that's going on in the film. It seems like that Matthew Vaughn wanted to create a different type of movie and just so happens to be within the Kingsman franchise because people are wanting more Kingsman movies. But I don't think that Matthew Vaughn wants to create more movies within this franchise anymore. It seems like that the first Kingsman film is just a one-off and is done. But because people are wanting more, it seems like that he has to create more and he's trying to think about what it is that he can do for this franchise. That's the reason why I'm putting the Kingsman on this list. It isn't a bad movie. I think that there's some good potential in here. It's just within execution and considering the type of franchise it's in, it's just a mess. Coming in at number 9 is going to be The Matrix Resurrections. I watched the Matrix franchise for the first time this year, and I really liked the first movie. Second film was okay, third one was not that good. And then The Matrix Resurrections came out, and for the first third, I was getting into it, but then it started to deteriorate. And then all of a sudden, I started asking myself, why does this movie exist? If the entire franchise was just that first third, and it would have played off of that in a more serious execution rather than what it's doing right there, because in the first third, even at that point, it was kind of playing itself up for laughs and acting like a spoof film. I feel like that this film would have had something really creative and would have presented itself as an alternative universe towards the Matrix franchise. But instead, the film just goes in the opposite direction where it's setting itself up for more Matrix movies, and I didn't like that it did that. It looked like that it was just losing sight of what its main goal was to do within the first Matrix film, just copy things that people liked from the first Matrix film and put it in here for the sake of nostalgic references, and have the movie finish off into a storyline that didn't interest me at all. I heard that this movie was split down the middle, and I understand the positive sides on why people would say that this movie is really good, but again, I don't feel like that was the intention that this film was going for. Again, not a bad movie, I would say, but the movie as a whole is not that good in its execution in my eyes. Number 8 is Wrath of Man. Literally, at the last second, like just now, I decided to put this one at number 8, mostly because this film has a lot more efforts than the original film that was supposed to be in this spot. Wrath of Man has a pretty neat way on doing storytelling with Jason Statham main character. And while this movie is not necessarily bad, it's just nothing memorable for me. I think the way that this movie was doing its storytelling was explaining in excruciating detail, at least in the last third, and then going a lot more often within that detail and lingering on within that detail, and it's just dragging out the movie further on and on during the course of its runtime. I don't know, Guy Ritchie is kind of like hit and miss for me with his movies, and this one was, I wouldn't say like a miss, but more like a downgrade compared to like some of his hits that he's done. Number 7, we have Mortal Kombat. I forgot that I saw this movie. I'm pretty shocked, and if I forgot a movie that is supposed to be famously popular and widely known, that shows you how much this movie doesn't work. I don't even know that much about Mortal Kombat. I haven't seen 90s films that were supposed to be terrible. I didn't play any of the video games. I just saw this movie, and with its lore and mythology, there's something intriguing about it, and I think that with Kano and Scorpio and Sub-Zero, they look like pretty cool characters, and honestly, the opening of the film, it looks interesting. But the movie seriously grinds to a halt when it focuses on these 3 main characters that I really do not care for. And it feels like that they drag this movie down so much that it almost ruins the experience. There's barely any action in here. Sometimes there's like some gory moments here and there, and it's not even that cool to look at either way. It's just like people dying, and yeah, if you just have people dying in here for the sake of it because that's something cool that people would look at, you're not necessarily making a good movie. All you're doing is just showing in gory effects, and you gotta put in a good story, and this movie feels like it has no story. It looks like it's just setting itself up, again, for a sequel. Don't really recall anything else that's in this movie. It's just bland. That's all it is. That's why it's on this list. Number 6 is The Little Things. I don't remember what this movie was about. I just know that I seen it in 2021. I think I was bored when watching it, and it had to be on this list because I don't remember it. And I guess that's the reason why it's in the middle, because if I don't remember it, I can't necessarily criticize it for being that negative, because maybe there is something good in here. I think I remember Rami Malek and Denzel Washington and Jared Leto being like having decent performances in the film. But other than that, it's just doing that cliche buddy-buddy cop stories that I'm so sick and death of seeing. I don't like stories that do this. It's just boring. Yeah, that's nothing else I really gotta say. It was a boring movie. You got a good cast, but it's a boring film. I think there was supposed to be a twist in the end that I didn't necessarily catch, but I don't really remember what happened in here. Yeah, that's all I got. It's a forgettable movie. Number 5 is Eternals. I tried to debate on whether or not I should put The Little Things over Eternals or Eternals under The Little Things. Well, the reason why I decided to pick Eternals over Little Things is because I at least remember Eternals. For the reason why I can say I can criticize and excuse my reasons on why it should be on this list rather than The Little Things, but The Little Things was so boring that it should be higher than the other movies on the bottom. That way it should be in the middle, and the Eternals, I remember that. That way it could be... This is too complicated. I'm not even going to try and explain this. I give the MCU credit that it's trying to do something different. It's wanting to do something unique within this universe. I even think that, again, the opening of this film was not that bad. When the movie just started to go along within the story and trying to do so many other things with 10 different characters, and all you're doing is just focusing on monotone and bland characters while other people are a lot more fascinating. When you have characters that are just monotone and bland and are not necessarily that fascinating, and the side characters who are a lot more fascinating are only giving like philosophical speeches and preachings rather than experiencing their character arcs, which could have been a fascinating journey, and instead just make them have like philosophical preaching and speeches as if we did experience something with these characters. It just doesn't work. Plus, some of the action in here is so lame. A lot of it is just shot in the dark. They're covered with a lot of alien creatures that look like garbage. I just find this to be one of the more bland Marvel films. Even though it tried to do something different, and some of it could have been fascinating, a lot of it just felt dull and boring. Number 4 is going to be Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I honestly didn't think it was going to go over the Eternals. I personally thought it was going to be underneath it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I actually don't like this movie. And I had to say, like, when I was in the movie theater, I didn't necessarily dislike it. I was actually in for it with the goofy nature and the silly corniness of the movie. But there was so much of it that it started to become stupid. And because there was so much stupid in the movie, I just can't help but say that this movie was ridiculous. I mean, sometimes it made me laugh, but then there were other times where I remember I was forcing myself to laugh because I was like, oh yeah, that's supposed to be funny. Haha! I don't know, I guess I liked it more than the first Venom because it's a little silly. But at the exact same time, I put it on the same par level as the first Venom movie because it is that stupid and silly. Woody Harrelson and his girlfriend, they're fun, but then again, this is all that we're going to get with Carnage and Venom. This is what we're getting with these two characters. And what they're doing is making a very silly, goofy movie. We need something better than this, honestly. Coming in at number 3 is going to be M. Night Shyamalan's Old. Man, this one is a huge misfire. It's pretty bad that it is funny to laugh at, but at other times, you kind of feel bad for the dude because you know he wants to make good movies. I actually don't mind Glass. I kind of like that film. And when I heard the concept of this movie, I was actually rooting for Shyamalan to see if it could be a good film. But when I saw the trailers and I saw how the acting was and some of the shots, it started to concern me. And when I saw the criticisms for it, I was like, uh-oh, is this going to be one of those Shyamalan films? And surely enough, yes, it was. This guy can make some interesting movies, but he can also make some interesting failures. Every time Shyamalan does make a movie, I have to go and see it. This is a case where you would probably know that this movie is bad from the get-go if you did see the trailers. But even at that moment, because I know that it's M. Night Shyamalan, I have to go and see it because he at least creates a fascinating and interesting film, whether it's good or bad. This just so happens to be one of his worst ones. Number 2 is Tom and Jerry. I kind of had this at number 1. Again, like my favorite movies list, I had this at number 1 for like a very long time, but there's one movie I didn't expect to be my least favorite film of 2021, like really didn't expect it to be that, but apparently it was. I decided to choose Tom and Jerry to be number 2. I only saw this movie mostly because I wanted to see if there can be a good film like this, like a live-action Tom and Jerry film, and seeing if there can be something good from it. I was bored and saw this on HBO Max. I didn't have anything else to do. I figured, why not go ahead and watch this? I figured it couldn't be that bad, and apparently it was actually that bad. I guess with the Tom and Jerry references, I mean, they got that. Good for you, but yeah, just like, you focused on side characters that never were need to be in here. They're not interesting, they're not funny, they're not cool or creative, terribly shot, terribly lit, there's terrible dialogue, terrible writing. It's a bad movie. I guess when you focus on the Tom and Jerry stuff, it's like, you're being honorable, but other than that, it's like, we're wasting our time watching other people just doing stupid stuff we just don't care to see. That's all I got for Tom and Jerry. It's a bad movie. It's the same reason why you would hate like the Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, etc. Number 1, you're probably asking yourself, what? This movie? Really? This one is worse than Tom and Jerry? Old? You seriously think this one deserves to be number 1 on your list? Well, first of all, it's my list, so I get to do whatever I want. And second, yeah, I agree. I know that this looks weird, but really looking into this film, there's definitely some big reasons why I have such a displeasure with this film. It's Don't Breathe 2. As a person that isn't in love with the first one, I think the first film is solid, and it's fine for what it does. I just find this second film to be disturbing. And not in the good kind of disturbing because it's like, oh, it's supposed to be a horror film. No, it's disturbing in the wrong reason. This movie seems manipulative and it's wanting you to justify certain characters doing specific actions for specific reasons. But because nobody in here is likable and everyone in here is just a pile of garbage, whatever happens within the situation, it feels like that there is no right or wrong. Now, if you are creating two different characters that are supposed to be dislikable and they're going at each other, and there is supposed to be some type of poetry within that storytelling, then yeah, I get it. But the intention of doing that in this film is not in here. Why? Because it's showing off as a schlocky, taken film. And seeing the motivations and characterizations of what our people have been through, especially if you look at the character that was from the last one, it feels disrespectful and disheartening. It's just disgusting. And that's the reason why I decided to put this as my #1 least favorite film of 2021. I didn't expect it to be that way, but this film gave me so much displeasure that I had to put it as #1 in my eyes. And that's it, guys. Those are my least favorite films of 2021. What are your least favorite, or worst, or most hated, disappointed, whatever they are? Put them down in the comment section below, and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.